Yes, dear listener, you're very welcome back to the podcast. This week, I've been listening to and musing on Taylor Swift's new album, The Tortured Poets Department. And I've been thinking a little bit, not so much about an album review, you can find that in other places and those other opinions. And to be honest with you, I think when it comes to this album, and we'll get onto it in a little bit, I don't think it actually matters in terms of review. What I am interested in, though, is the allure of the lore behind it and the allure of the lore of the artist who writes it. That seems to be, when it comes to, if you want to say the discourse or use that word about it, about the album, that seems to be where people are coming into. They're digging into the lyrics, they're digging into the meaning, they're coming up with almost theories and conspiracy theories even about what the album means or what it means to the artist. And I think that's an incredibly positive thing. I think it's great to see people engaging in art, engaging in songwriting in such a way. And it's interesting, especially with Taylor Swift, because you get this artist where people have this preconceived notion that you can either get really strong opinions either way, either people love it or they hate it or whatever. And I think it's interesting that people frame her and her songwriting in this kind of way of, well, it's drama and it's, you know, that this means more or whatever. And it's interesting when you look back in the history of music and history of songwriting, this has always been the case. There's always been these songs and artists who write in a way where it's so personal to them and the meaning is kind of just barely below the surface. It's enough to kind of draw you in. There's not too much in the way between you and maybe coming to a conclusion. All you have to do is look to the likes of Carly Simon with You're So Vain. I think for decades people didn't know if that was about Warren Beatty or if it was about Mick Jagger, who I believe actually sings backing vocal on it. I think later on maybe she admitted it was about Warren Beatty, but I'm not entirely sure. But the song itself was a cutting single about one person's vanity, about really, you know, I always think of that lyric, you know, you walked into the party like you were walking onto a yacht, which I always love that lyric. Obviously, Fleetwood Mac's Rumours is one of the albums where it's not so much a mystery as to who it's about and who's talking about whom. It's literally a bunch of people having marital or relationship issues at one each other in the length of a record. And it's amazing. We're drawn into it. It's one of the greatest albums of all time. Carly Simon's You're So Vain is one of the greatest songs of all time. And as well, it's interesting, I was watching a short video on the meaning behind Phil Collins's In the Air Tonight. And he was talking about it, and that's another song that was dissected, I believe, at the time he was going through a divorce. And in the interviews, he said, I just kind of, you know, ad-libbed it in the studio at the time. If it meant something, maybe it was subconscious or whatever, but at the time it didn't mean what people think it means. So people can read it the wrong way as well. Beyonce's Lemonade, another one, Becky with the good hair. But I think in terms of that, how people approach art and the way people consume art, I think it's really positive to see people so engaged, so infatuated with an artist that, you know, they want to delve into it. They are reading the lyrics. They're going through moments in maybe videos or performances. And what does she mean by this? I think seeing people engage in art in that way. And I know, look, there's always this argument that it's too much on one side. And sure, look, too much of anything, you know what I mean? Obviously, it can go too far. But I think when people come at it from a genuine interest kind of way, it's not that far removed from when people do it with video games. I like playing video games, and, you know, Fallout or Dark Souls or the Elder Scrolls or games like that, they have lore in them. It's not part of the overall game. The overall game is the entertainment, in the same way with Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets Department. The overall game is the music. But in terms of this, the lore, like people like to shift through the video game's lore and the story and like these hidden bits of it and kind of, you know, make video essays about it. And in the same way you get music videos, you know, Trash Theory, Polyphonic, people who make these incredible videos. So I think it's a real draw in. The album is long, and that's one of the other things I think it's very interesting about it. It is a long record. And it seems to be in a way that Taylor Swift has moved away almost from the idea of needing a hit. She doesn't need one. To sell records or to get people engaged. She has built this huge audience that she barely needs to like advertise a record. It kind of just comes out. Here it is. I've just dropped a record, and people will listen because they're so engaged and so invested in the artist. I think again, that's a hell of a positive thing. She's created a fan base of her own, independent of anything else. You can say it's hugely popular, but there's been years of work up to it. Am I going to sit here and say I've loved every song Taylor Swift has ever released? Absolutely not. Do I like some of her songs? Absolutely, I do. I thought Folklore was a great record. I think Shake It Off I think is a great single. It's so fun. Tortured Poets Society, I love what she did with re-recording the albums and taking back her music from people who didn't deserve to have ownership of it. And I think that community, as you know, polarizing as it can be, and that's kind of putting it very kindly in ways, I think that can only be a positive thing that people are engaging in art this way. And I think the main thing about this, and the main thing about this video, dear listener, and this podcast indeed, is don't be a dick. And when it comes to like people being like, oh, Taylor Swift, meh, 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 or kind of being like, you know, oh well, actually, or being the other side of it, like Taylor Swift is the only thing ever. You know, don't be a dick to people. If people like something, that's fine. If people don't like something, that's equally fine. You don't have to condescend. You don't have to talk down to people. I was talking to somebody recently, and they were saying that somebody had said to them, oh, well, now that you've listened to this, are you going to listen to Patti Smith? And I remember them saying that, and obviously their reaction was like, how dare you? You know, obviously I know who Patti Smith is. But like that people would be this condescending, like, oh, well, actual real artists. Well, you know, say what you want, but Taylor Swift is a real artist, a real songwriter who makes records that speak to people. And that with art is one of the hardest things to do. And if she's introducing people to new music, or she's borrowing from other artists kind of types of sound, that's all incredibly positive. But it's not, there's no need to be a dick to people for liking something. And there's no need to be a gatekeeper. Or, and it's, let's be honest, 9.5 times out of 10, it's a dude that's saying stuff like that, right? It's like, well, actually, how many songs of, the Blue Nile do you actually know? Well, fuck off. How many fucking songs do you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. This has gone into a completely different area. But it is that kind of like, fuck you. Who are you to fucking quiz anybody on fucking music? And I know I'm talking on a music podcast, but I hope when you listen to this, there's a more inclusive kind of nature to what we're talking about. And we talk about music in an inclusive way here, where it doesn't matter where you're coming from or what references you have to music, it's all valid. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, the allure of lore in Taylor Swift and her music and the effect it has on people. And I think to me, it's an incredibly positive thing to see any group of people or anybody delving into art in such a way. And yeah, in terms of the album, I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. And as I say, I don't think it needs hits, so it's playing in a different scope where the songs are a bit longer. And yeah, it's interesting to see an artist shift away from almost looking for mass appeal and kind of going, well, I have this huge audience. I'm going to speak to them. So yeah, that's Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Society Department. You can find reviews there. That's not really a review, but just really my opinion on the record.